President Trump amplifying baseless claims of election fraud in California. This continues as vote counts show his endorsed candidate, Spencer Pratt, has been defeated in the Los Angeles mayoral race. Trump took to social media yesterday, writing in part, quote, "Not possible for Spencer Pratt to have lost the L.A. runoffs after the big lead he had. Rigged elections." Here we go again, I guess. Instead of Pratt, progressive city council member Nithya Raman has advanced to the November runoff against Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass after extending her lead over Pratt by nearly 22,000 votes. Vice President J.D. Vance backed Trump's claims yesterday, saying in an interview the primary appeared, quote, "pretty shady," without providing any evidence. California's slow vote counting process, driven by the state's heavy reliance on mail voting, delays final results. That is known. House Speaker Mike Johnson is also backing President Trump's claims that California's election results are raising questions. He was repeatedly asked by CNN what evidence exists to support claims of fraud.
The president keeps saying that there's election fraud in the California mayoral race. What evidence is there to prove that?
You tell me, Manu. They are counting votes weeks after the election. We have entire nations with huge populations, like India, that can count their votes in 24 to 48 hours.
You're saying it's rigged like the president?
I'm not saying it's rigged. I'm saying it stinks to high heaven, and everybody knows that.
But what evidence is there to prove that there was rigged?
Look, some of these efforts are so diabolical and so far upstream it is impossible to prove. But I think everybody knows instinctively something is wrong here.
Republican Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin also cast doubt on the ongoing election. Pressed on claims of widespread fraud, Johnson insisted there's so much evidence of irregularities, but then pointed to none.
There's never been evidence presented in any of these cases. Do you side with the president when he speaks about this topic, or would you rather that he skip it entirely?
I think in so many cases, I mean, I'm doing my investigations in terms of, the corruption during COVID.
Yeah.
And some side will say, well, there's no proof. There's no evidence. I mean, there was so much evidence of irregularities in the 2020 election, but all you have to do is say, there's no evidence. There's no proof. There are all kinds of irregularities that occur. I mean, the fact that California, how many days after the election, still can't call the resort.
But my point is there's never been anything proven on scale that would affect an election. But if there's so much evidence, Senator, why not just present it? There's been multiple chances to do so, courts of law and otherwise.
People do, and it's ignored.
Johnson and Johnson just pushing the president's factually incorrect stories about California. Donald Trump knows, as does everybody in Washington, that California always takes 30 days by law to count their votes. That is what the state did when Republican Arnold Schwarzenegger was elected governor. That is what it did when Republicans took back control of the House in 2022. That is what it did when Republicans maintained their House majority in 2024. That's how California counts its ballots every year. I'll speak slowly for those who are confused, like Johnson and Johnson. Donald Trump knows that. Speaker Mike Johnson is not confused. He knows that. Senator Ron Johnson is not confused. He knows that. They only say elections are legitimate when Republicans win them, even in California, especially now in California. Theirs are cynical, seemingly autocratic gestures that undermine American democracy. That's what we're seeing here. As for Ron Johnson, he was caught on tape in August of 2021, patiently explaining to someone who he thought was a MAGA supporter, telling them that Donald Trump legitimately lost the 2020 election. He went into great detail about how every statewide Republican on the Wisconsin ballot got 51,000 more votes than Donald Trump, and that Donald Trump did not get those votes because he hurt his standing with Wisconsin Republicans. Take a look.
The only reason Trump lost Wisconsin is 51,000 Republican voters didn't vote for him. They voted for other Republican candidates. There's nothing obviously skewed about the results. There isn't.
There's nothing skewed about the results.
About the results in Wisconsin. So listen, collectively, Republicans got 1.661 million votes. 51,000 more votes than Trump got. Trump lost by 20,000. If Trump got all the Republicans voted for Trump the way they voted for the Assembly candidates, he would have won. He didn't get 51,000 votes that other Republicans got. That's why he lost.
Ron Johnson said that election was legitimate. After all, Trump lost the 2020 election by more than 7 million votes, despite what he's been saying recently. These men know the law. The only time they say elections in California or elsewhere in the U.S. are legitimate is when Republicans win or when they know the cameras are rolling and they're performing for President Trump. Willie, you know, it's always really sad to watch someone lie, especially for someone else who is in power, and to not see them stand up for this country and for our democracy. But I think the bigger picture is there seems to be some sort of preparation going on here. That's just my analysis. But it doesn't feel good looking ahead to the midterms, the way these Republicans are behaving.
You're not alone in that thought, by the way, Mika. There are a lot of people who believe that this California election, which everyone there who we just heard from knows exactly how elections work in California, as you just detailed how they have worked in California, frustrating to a lot of people how slow it is, even to Democrats, perhaps needs to be reformed, even according to many Democrats in the states. But that's the way it works right now. They're counting mail-in votes. They go county by county. There are 58 counties. It takes too long, but that's the way it works. And it should not be a surprise that in the very, very blue state of California, you have two Democrats advancing to a runoff, despite the electricity that Spencer Pratt did create among some people. So, you know, Jim Vandehei, this is such a corrosive lie. And one of the stories of the Trump era is not just that Donald Trump lies and pushes these conspiracy theories that then are echoed across his friendly media outlets, across podcasts, and then swallowed whole by many people in this country. It's that you have leadership, not podcasters, leadership, the Speaker of the House, Ron Johnson, the Vice President of the United States, who just fall in line and repeat whatever the lie is because they're so afraid of Donald Trump and they're so insecure in their jobs, I guess. They're so fearful of being primaried or something. They don't have anything else going on that they could do if they lost, that they just lie and lie and lie. And here they are doing it again.
Yeah, I mean, it really sucks for democracy. This is the stuff you see happen in a broken country, in a third world country where they've not been able to govern effectively. Every time you call into question whether or not our elections are valid, you weaken the soul of the country. And that's why this is damaging. If Ron Johnson or the Speaker has evidence, like you guys talked about it, present it. Present it clearly. But to distort it and not explain to the American people that we have this election system where the states decide how they're going to vote, how they're going to count the votes, when they get counted, when mail-in ballots can come in, and how they get processed, is disingenuous. And I think it means that every state has a responsibility to make sure in preparation for this next election that people understand how voting takes place in their state. There are going to be challenges. We saw it in 16, 18, 20, 22, 24. You're going to see it again in 2026. And the real danger here is if you look at recent elections, especially these off-year elections, if you move 50,000 votes here or there in these House races, you can determine who has control of Congress. So you often have fewer than 1% of people determining whether Democrats or Republicans run things. So these allegations are very serious. And if you have evidence of it, just present it. Take it to the courts. Make sure that these elections are changed. But in every case so far, I've seen very, very few cases where anybody's proven any kind of election malfeasance that led to more than a few votes being changed. And that's a hell of an accusation. Back it up or don't say it.
Yeah, and in 2020, the Trump team did go to court and lost just about every time, 62, 63 incidences. And let's look at the numbers. Just look at the numbers here. Spencer Pratt in 2026 in a three-way race is pulled in the exact same, almost exact same percentage of the vote as Donald Trump did in a two-way race in 2024, meaning Pratt's outperforming what Trump did 2 years ago. There are only so many Republican voters in the city of Los Angeles. It is one of the deepest blue cities in the country. There's no grand conspiracy here. Yes, he had some ads that went viral. Yes, he outperformed Trump. But Richard Haass, there was no chance he was actually going to win. There's no surprise here. But what they're doing is letting a groundwork.
Yeah, what's really going on?
Two different and there's two different plays they could take while claiming conspiracies as we look towards November's midterms. They could claim irregularities, they can claim conspiracies, and actively take measures to interfere with the vote. Or they could say, well, the voting result is illegitimate and we're not going to honor it, and therefore not give the Democrats, let's say, the House of Representatives.
Absolutely. So what we're seeing now is a two-part strategy. One is before people cast their votes. One is after. The before, things like redistricting is going to be a real issue. Voter repression, having ICE or other troops around and so forth, making it really hard to reach polling stations in largely Democratic districts. That's the pre-vote process. Then you have after the votes. How do you ensure the integrity of the process? Don't be surprised in November if we see voting machines and ballot boxes seized. And so forth, in order to prevent fraud. But what we're going to find is local officials may find themselves no longer in control of mail-in ballots. And then, as you're right, this could end up in the House or whatever. So what we're seeing is a multi-phase, multi-pronged strategy. Here we are. This is the 250th year of this country. Well, here we are. We're meant to be honoring, celebrating the Declaration. And we probably right now are facing, in some ways, the most concerted assault potentially, hopefully won't happen. But these rumblings, this is really worrisome stuff. This is preparing the ground, as you say, for a serious pushback against, I think, a free and fair election this November. So people have to take this seriously.